I have three more quarters, two more after this one to complete my ministerial studies within CSL. Thank you so much for having me back. So as you know, today the topic is getting comfortable with discomfort. So I'm going to start by telling you this little story. And this took place at the turn of the century. There were two sisters, and they inherited a cattle ranch. And they really didn't know very much about cattle ranching, and they did the best that they could, but it really wasn't going very well for them. So what they did is they decided that if they could find another bull to service the cattle, they would have more calves and more cows, and things would just go better for them. So one of the sisters said to the other, look, there's a bull auction going on, and I'm going to take the train. I'm going to go check out these bulls. And if I find a bull that I think is right for us, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send you a telegram. I'm going to tell you to hitch up the wagon, put the trailer with the high sides up behind it, and come and get me. And the other sister said, well, okay, that's just fine. So they only had $600. And the sister goes to the bull auction, and she finds the perfect bull, and he only costs $599. So she buys the bull, and she goes next door to the telegraph office and says, I would like you to send a telegram to my sister. And the guy says, okay, miss, what would you like me to put down? And she said, hitch up the wagon, put the trailer and the big sides up behind it, and come and get me. And the guy at the telegraph office says, well, it's $1 a word. And she only has $1 left. So she says, well, let me think about this for a little bit. And she says, okay, I have the word. And she says, comfortable. And the guy says, how can that word sum up all the other things? And she says, well, my sister is a little bit slow in reading. She's going to be sounding this out. Come for the bull. So you see, there is always another way to look at things. And this is what we are talking about today. And so I really enjoyed the affirmation, and I'm going to do this again. I have a visual tool. Give me a moment. Everybody's coming with props today. I am open to possibility as I discover multiple perspectives. So what happens is, this is what it is when we're all closed up and we just cannot see our way out of the box. And so in this configuration, there is always a right and a wrong. And so usually, how many of us here are always the ones that are right? And then there's always the other people, right? And so what we're going to be talking about today is different ways of taking a look at things. First of all, what is discomfort? Discomfort is not pain. Discomfort is something that nags you, something annoying. Physical discomfort, you might think of the fairy tale of the Princess and the Pea, right? She had 20 mattresses and down comforters. It was this nagging little thing, all right? The other kind of discomfort, it can be emotional discomfort. I have a little story to do with that. We had friends, very dear friends, that bought a beautiful house in a new large tract subdivision on large lots, and they were like little mini McMansions. But every sixth one of them repeated. They looked the same. So it was Christmas, and we went over there. We parked in the driveway. The door was open. They just had the screen door, the casserole, the wine, the presents. We just walked in. It was someone else. And they saw us with the food and the wine and the presents. They said, that's okay, you can come in. But, you're embarrassed. It's like, what am I doing here, right? And then the other kind of discomfort, and this is mostly what we're going to be talking about, is spiritual discomfort, where you just know something is not right. And I think that happens when we are out of alignment with spirit. And instead of stuffing it down and trying to ignore it, I think it's really important that we connect with it, because those are really the goalposts of our life. And so we try to make ourselves feel better. We try to make ourselves feel better by maybe comfort foods or television binge watching, or for me, my favorite is internet shopping or, whatever. But really, we need to listen to that. And when we listen to that, we will also find that there are other ways. So psychologist Albert Ellis, who's the founder of what became cognitive behavioral therapy, it says that we are hedonists. We just love to feel good. We like pleasure. We like comfies. And so as hedonists, we do not like discomfort because it means that we're just not feeling good. So he says that we can get greater benefits in the future by dealing with discomfort today. Because what is it? It's self-discipline. We cannot be completely self-indulgent, because discomfort is part of life. And so if you're completely self-indulgent and you're not looking forward to the future and taking, for example, if I have an early flight tomorrow, I'm not going to watch movies till, past midnight. I'm going to make sure I get my rest and I'm packed and I've got everything lined up. So what it does is when we practice this kind of self-discipline, we build some kind of muscle memory that helps us to refrain. And so then we're no longer going, oh, gee, I can't watch movies till past midnight. Because we know you're more excited about being alert in the morning and taking this wonderful trip that you're going to be taking. We're going to be talking a little bit about Jainism. How many of you are familiar with Jainism? So in a nutshell, because we're not going to focus on all of it, we're just going to focus on their ability to look at different viewpoints. I would say that they're closely aligned to Buddhists. They come from, mostly they're in India, and they're extreme pacifists. These individuals wear masks not because of the pandemic, but because they wouldn't want to accidentally inhale a bug. Not because they wouldn't want to inhale the bug to harm themselves, they would not want to harm the bug. These monks often meditate in a lotus position naked, because when you make clothes, you use other resources. These people, when they get ready to transition, they stop eating because it's a waste of resource. And of course, they're vegans, and they live very, very frugal, meager lives, seeking that state of balance between themselves and the environment. But the thing that we have to look at mostly from them is that they're willing to look at other viewpoints. And since I can't keep opening that thing, that I'm turning it. And there's new ideas to take a look at it. Because in their pacifist state, they're looking to make sense out of things. They're looking at a way to make everything work. It's interesting that science and quantum physics has looked at what they believe in comparison with Einstein's theory of relativity. They do not believe in the God. They believe in the universal consciousness. They also believe that discomfort is a state of mind. They believe that time has no physical existence. And there's perception in the space-time continuum. And of course, Einstein demonstrated that. So this, which is thousands of years old, we find that there's the same golden thread in the universe, but it looks different and it's called by a different name. But when we open our minds, we can see that it's the same. And so what I'd like for you to do is, if you don't mind, is to take this little insert to the side that has the writing on it. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it talks about how to navigate polarities. And I'm going to pick something very, very simple, like, for example, generosity and stinginess, okay? So we're going to pretend that we're either generous or else we're stingy. And how do we balance those things? We're always looking for the transformational way. Well, of course, if you're overly generous, you're going to end up with nothing. Or you're going to become so obnoxious that you're one of these people that says, take it, take it, take it. Person says, no, I'd rather not. Take it, take it, take it. And they leave your house and you chase them to the car with like whatever it is you're trying to give them. My mother was like that, God love her, you know. And then on the other side of being, you know, stingy, of course, we have Scrooge. Of course, we know that he too found a third way. So you want to think about, how can I find the balance in this within myself? And we often go through an inner struggle that says, well, you know, I do want to be generous, but I really don't have that much to give. And a part of you says, well, when we write our checks, it's like, that's too much. You know, it's uncomfortable to go down the middle. And this is what we're talking about, getting comfortable with the discomfort. Because remember, as Ernest Holmes said, we are spirit having a human experience. Does spirit have a problem finding a balance between being generous or being overly frugal or stingy? No. But it is us, because we live in the material world. So we don't want to be left with not enough. We're always fearing not having enough. And we also are wanting to be liked and loved. And many of us equate that with giving things away, because somewhere along the line we got the idea that that's what makes a good person. So the discomfort, you see, does not come from our spiritual selves. It comes from our human selves having this experience in the physical world. And so this is an example, a very small example of how you can overuse stinginess, how you can overuse being generous, and how uncomfortable it is to find the middle. But if you practice the middle, you will get comfortable with it. And this is what we're talking about. And if you turn this thing over, you'll see that it's blank. And so I know we would like to keep this, and we would like to work with this whenever we have a challenge in our lives. But I also invite you to take a copy of this and send it to our congressional representatives in Washington. I'm not making a political comment, but it's the polarizing thing. It's right, it's wrong. It's right, you're wrong. And so we do that to each other all the time. We do it to ourselves. So why wouldn't we do it to someone else? Ernest Holmes said that the mind is a magnet, and we attract that which we identify within the self in order to get the most out of life. And we must learn consciously to change many of our habitual thought patterns. And this is not easy. Joe Dispenza wrote a whole book on it called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. But we have to move our old thought patterns, and they cling to us with great tenacity, Holmes wrote. But being thought patterns, they can be reversed in that gray area of discomfort. But then they're reversed. Then you become comfortable. If you are filled with fear, refill yourself with faith, he says. For faith always overcomes fear. And of course, if there's something that we fear or something that we are uncomfortable with, something that, for example, bothers us. My car bothers me. That doesn't really, I love my car. But whatever it is, and I focus on that, or I focus on the pebble in my shoe, we know that what we focus on expands. Carl Jung told us that. And Carl Jung wasn't even all that smart, because this originally came from Emma Curtis Hopkins from the mid-19th century. She was the teacher of teachers. And she said The world will persist in exhibiting before you what you persist in affirming that the world is. So there's a lot going on in the world today. And I talk to a lot of people that complain about it. And what can we do about it? Find the good in it. If you complain about it, you'll get more stuff to complain. You'll alienate more people. You'll find more things wrong in other people. And by the way, this thing about finding the middle ground, I'm stated with a friend here last night in Oro Valley, and we talked about the ways in which she tried to get some other people in different conflict situations to find the middle ground. And they rejected it. This applies to you. It does not apply to other people. Because if somebody has the need to be right, and in that inherently is the need for you to be wrong, if you try to solve the situation, what are you doing? You're causing discomfort and annoyance for them. So this applies to us. Unfortunately, it always starts with us. We can never, ever change other people. So I'd like to tell you a little story about the finding comfort in the discomfort. And this takes place in old Chinese times, in an old Chinese village where there was a young man, and he wanted to be a wrestler. And he found a master, and he showed great talent and great potential. And he was learning all of the moves. And he suffered an unfortunate accident where he lost his right arm. And so after that, he recovered, and he really had this dream and passion to return to wrestling. So in his mid to late teens, he returned to the master, and he wanted to start all over again without a right arm. So the master taught him one move, and the same move over and over and over and over again for a year. And the young man asked the master, why? Why am I just doing this one move? And the master explained to him that practice makes perfect. And you have to be able to do something in the most excellent way if you want to succeed as a master wrestler, if you want to become a champion. And so you just need to keep practicing this one move. So he did, and he never questioned the master again. And 2 years later, with a lot of butterflies and discomfort, he joined a wrestling championship. And he went and he saw all those other young men practicing all of these moves, and he only knew the one. And he felt set apart. He felt fearful, but he was there. So he entered the championship. He got his opponent. The opponent made his first move, and the young man just defeated him at once, knocked him down. And this happened with each and every single occurrence, and he became the champion. And he asked his master afterwards, how did this happen? They know so many moves. They have all of their limbs. They're so fit. And the master said to him, you know, when you came to me after the accident, I really didn't think you could do it. But you were so determined, and you had such a vision for it, that I taught you this one move. Because the only comeback to this move from your opponent is to go ahead and grab your right arm. And you don't have one. So there is always another lining, another way to look at things. Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith says that pain pushes until vision pulls. And this is what happened to this young man. He had a vision, and he had an accident, and he was in pain. But, he pursued his vision, and it worked for him. I remember when I retired from real estate in 2019, I got my practitioner's license in 2019. I had a wonderful 35-year real estate career in the Reno Tahoe area. Number one in our real estate office. We had a lovely home. I was a member of the Reno Center for Spiritual Living for something like 14 years, was on the board of trustees. I had the perfect life, but I knew there was something more. And I knew that I could not pursue whatever the something more was as long as I was in that life, because there was no room for it. Like the ball, I had to expand. So thankfully, my husband, if I told him that tomorrow we want to go on a trek around the world, he'd just go pack. So I shared this, and we retired for no other reason that I sensed that there was something more. And so I began my ministerial studies, and I began my master's degree in consciousness studies, which I'm now taking the very last class of it. And I do teach real estate online, and I do other things, but there's this feeling that there's a vision. And this vision started probably 25 years ago when I was at Asilomar. I don't know how many of you used to ever go to Asilomar. I would see those people on stage teaching, and I thought that was me. But I was, at the time, in my 40s, and I had a career, and I thought, oh, you're too old. And so here I am that many years later, because there is a different point of view. Have any of you seen the movie Rashomon? Do you know anything about that? Okay. So Rashomon has actually become a noun. Rashomon is a movie from the 1950s. And it's a Japanese black and white movie in Japanese. But many still think that it is the best movie that was ever made. And what this movie is about is there's a torrential downpour rain at the old ruined entry of a temple, which is what Rashomon is. And there is a priest and a woodcutter and a commoner that seek shelter. And they talk about a trial and an event that just happened. And the event was this: there was a samurai, and he had a fiancée, his bride. They weren't married. And they were walking through the forest. And of course, the woodcutter had walked through the forest, and the priest, and they had been witnesses. And there was a very, very infamous bandit who coveted his to-be wife. So what the bandit did is he attacked the samurai, he tied him to a tree, and he raped the woman. And the samurai watched this. And the samurai is killed. We're not clear why, because there's different stories. This is what it's about. But he is killed really by the bandit. The bandit had wanted to kill him so that he could do this, but the deed was done. The story is about how the bandit tells the story from his viewpoint. The woman tells the story from her viewpoint. The samurai in court tells his story from his viewpoint through a medium. And they use flashbacks in telling the story, but the stories are all different, including the witness story of the woodcutter, because we find out later that the dagger with which he was killed was a beautiful bejeweled dagger, and the woodcutter stole it after watching the event. So we never really know who's right. And that's the whole point of it. That's why we use the word Rashomon. Because we're always wanting, but what really happened? What really happened is the way in which we have, the stories in the Bible, the 4 different viewpoints. It depends. It depends on whose viewpoint it is. That's what happened. They all told the story in the way in which what happened to them. And we want to know the truth, but the only way to know the truth is to identify with whose truth we want to know. It's very important. Identify with whose truth you want to know. Or you can just accept that all different viewpoints are relatively right, because we all want to know the truth, from the point of view that makes us look as best as we can. If I've done something wrong, and forget me, my 5-year-old grandson, it's because this person, that person, I had no choice. I didn't eat my lunch because there was no time. I didn't do something that I should have done because someone else prevented me from it. Circumstances prevented me from it. We always tell the story, yeah, but I had no choice. Why do people steal? Because the world is unfair, because they really need it, because they can't afford it, because so-and-so doesn't deserve it. Nobody says, well, because I'm selfish and I'm lazy and I don't want to earn it for myself, so I'm going to go take it from so-and-so because I'm senseless, all right? So we all, whatever it is we do, we explain it from our own viewpoint. Brené Brown, in Atlas of the Heart, talks about an experiment in 1954. And 1954 is the year I was born, and this was in December of 54. There was a female cult leader that believed that aliens were coming to get her and her followers at the end of that night, December 31st. And so she encouraged them to go ahead and sell their houses, give away the possessions, and wait for, and this is a true story, this is not a joke, and wait for the starship. And some people did that, some people didn't do that. There was a psychiatrist by the name of Leon Festinger, and he and his associates wove themselves into this cult, in order to have better understanding. And what he predicted is that when the spaceship doesn't come, the people that were so dedicated to that experience are going to be even greater believers, because they're going to think that they were saved because of their faith in being able to surrender everything and because of their leader. And the people that didn't give everything away and were kind of waffly on whether the spaceship is coming or not are just going to drift away from the cult. And nobody believed them, but this is what happened. People double down. And we see this in politics today, which is why I said send that form to your representatives. No matter how much logic you think you're sharing with someone, it makes them double down. Nobody says, oh my gosh, I sold my house, I gave everything away, there's no spaceship. What an idiot I was. No, it's not in human nature to do that. We're all wired differently. In one of my studies in my master's degree, I wanted to know how come some people can believe what to me, and I don't want to offend anybody, are insane things like maybe Jonah did spend 3 days in the belly of the whale. And that same person can be a research methodologist, can be a neurosurgeon, could be someone that is conducting all kinds of experiments relying on empirical data. And I thought, how can a person have these two beliefs at the same time? So what I found through neuroscience research and PubMed and different articles is that when they do the fMRIs, which are when they take the pictures of your brain, where it fires, what color it is, that's what an fMRI is, those things occur in different parts of the brain. So we can be incongruous. We can put our faith in oxymorons, which are two opposing different viewpoints, at the same time, and we don't see a problem, not all of us, but some people don't see a problem with that, because this happens here and that happens there, and never the two shall meet. And so you can't really argue with them or say anything. So it's important, and I thought, well, as a minister, I really need to know how that happens, How does that happen? How can you believe this and then be a scientist? So that's how it happens. So I wanted to quote something from Phineas Quimby. Phineas Quimby was from the mid-19th century. He's considered the father of New Thought. And this is what he wrote. Everyone is made of matter, and matter is continually going through a chemical change. This change is life. It's not wisdom, but life, like vegetable or mineral life. Every idea is matter. So, of course, it contains life in the same way of something that can be changed. So that means us. Everything is matter, and matter is subject to change. And how does matter change? It changes when it loses or absorbs energy from something else. So, how do our thoughts change and our attitudes when we lose or absorb the energy of another or in an event? And usually that catalyst is some form of heat or thermal energy. And in life, that form of heat or thermal energy is something that's uncomfortable. So when we're uncomfortable, we need to change. But we don't. So often we just try to change the world around us. We try to change the other person. We adhere to our very own viewpoint. And that's you see, where everything goes wrong. So I wanted to close with, I have a quote from Ernest Holmes. Here it is. Ernest Holmes says, life is a mirror and will reflect back to the thinker what the thinker thinks onto it. So I would recommend to each of us we look at our lives. If our lives have financial lack, relationships that are not the best, if there is in this order, order is the first law of the universe, we need to take a look at what's going on inside of us. Now, you might feel that way about your life, and you might have the same life, and you like it. So you see, it isn't about the life you're living. It is about the attitude you have about the life that you are living. So if you're happy with it, then you know that your inner house is in order. And it's not about changing your life. It's about changing your inner house so that the life that you're living is the life that you're looking to live. So I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and to share this with you. I would like to close with the brief. Do you do a meditation in closing? A little prayer. All right. Thank you. So I want to invite each and every single one of us to come to that place of centeredness where we know who and whose we are. We sit in the presence of the presence, and we know that we are spirit come to have a human experience. We know that we live in a universe that conspires to support us because we are a reflection of the divine. And there is no greater power than the power of God. And we are not put here to be at odds with ourselves. We are here to become the best spiritual, magnificent version of ourselves. And so in doing this, we welcome paradox. We welcome discomfort because they are clues. They're goalposts. They're spirit whispering a little to the left, a little to the right. Look at it this way. And remember that the world can only be that full expression of the divine when each and every single one of us is that full light. And so the work begins and ends with us. Spirit only knows yes. And as spirit incarnate, when we meet people that are different than us, let us just say yes. Let us seek to understand. Let us seek within ourselves to find that third way. Let us seek to make that shift that makes room for each and every single one of us. Because the garden is intended for each and every single one of us. There is only one love, one presence, one humanity, one connection. And each and every single one of us is just but a link in that golden chain of beauty and love and wisdom, divine expression and creativity. Oh, Mother, Father God, I just give thanks for this truth. I give thanks for this vision, and I imprint it to my heart. And I just release my words into that fertile soil of consciousness from whence they came. And I say yes. And we just affirm it together, knowing it does not return unfulfilled. And we say, and so it is. Thank you. Thank you.